This is Campbell McCrary, Amvest Capital in New York. Dakota Gold today, NYSE American, trades as DC. Welcome back, and also welcome to possible new friends of Amvest and Dakota. Q&A is very important today, so if you would send in your questions. There's a little box that says ask question of management. You can pop it in there, send it, and only we see the questions and comments. Also, if you like what you're seeing now, you can share it in real time. That's fairly obvious. And important disclaimer, this call is most definitely for informational purposes only and is in no way any kind of solicitation to buy or sell securities. You all know who Amvest is. But wanted to introduce our live guest today, Jonathan Awde. He's the president and CEO of Dakota Gold. Welcome back, John. A lot of exciting drill results I've been noticing, and steady news flow, and maybe put it all together. What does it mean? So thank you, John.
Great. Thanks, Campbell and Amvest. Really appreciate the opportunity to give many of you an update and hopefully introduce the story to some new listeners. So as Campbell mentioned, Jonathan Awde, President and CEO of Dakota Gold Corp. So this, I'll try to achieve a balance of giving some of the audience an update, but then also introducing some of the new things that have been going on. Most noteworthy are our new discovery called the JB Zone at our Maitland project, which is contiguous with the Homestake Mine. So for those of you that are new to the story, Dakota Gold Corp is a South Dakota focused gold exploration and development company looking at revitalizing the Homestake District in Lead, South Dakota. So as Campbell had mentioned, we do trade on the NYSE American under the symbol DC. So it's been a busy year. Roughly 12 and a half to 13 months ago, we completed our merger between JR Resources and DTRC. We drilled over 140,000 feet in a year, largely with the 4 rigs that we still have active right now. April and June of last year, we got into the GDXJ and the Russell 3000. The Russell reconstitutes once a year, and they'll do so again in June of 23. I will talk a little bit today about our land tenure because we get asked a lot of questions about permitting in the US, and that's why we have that private land there, 13,000 acres. That's key. So we have just under 50,000 acres of land where roughly one-third of that, just under one-third of that is on private ground. In the last 3 months, we've made 2 discoveries. Most recently, we announced the JB discovery, which is in Homestake Formation, which is the same host as what Homestake mined for 125 years. So our exploration group is really excited about what we're seeing there. And we announced our first discovery in what we call the Unionville Zone back in February. And that's also at our Maitland project. And I will give you all an update on our Richmond Hill project because we do have 2 rigs drilling there right now. So Lead is about an hour drive north of Rapid City. Lots of direct flights from Denver, Minneapolis, Chicago, Dallas, Vegas. So it's quite convenient. The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, which takes place every August, that sees the population of the state double, is about a 15-minute drive northeast of Lead. Strong team, lots of experience in the district, combined with people who have commercial and strategic experience, most notably Bob Quartermain, who is one of our co-chairs and the largest shareholder. As many of you know, Bob co-founded Pretium, which was taken out by Newcrest. Newcrest is recently being taken out by Newmont, and Silver Standard, which is now called SSR Mining, which is a $4.5 billion company. So when I refer to the Homestake District, this is what I refer to as this red area here. This is mapped Homestake formation. So this is really what we're focusing on now with 2 of the 4 rigs at Maitland. It's contiguous with the old mine, which if you can see my cursor is right here. We're just to the north of the town of Lead, and then down the hill is Deadwood, which has lots of great restaurants and gambling. The state's only active gold mine is Wharf. Core does a really nice job of operating that. Our Richmond Hill project, which we picked up from Barrick. And I do want to talk a little bit about that. So for those of you that are new to the story, we get asked a lot of questions. Well, if it was so good, why didn't Barrick keep this project? So when Barrick bought Homestake in 2001, Barrick did not buy Homestake for South Dakota. They bought it for other assets that Homestake had in its portfolio. And I do want to note that this would be the 3rd project out of the Mark Bristow era of Barrick that Barrick has sold out of their closure group, with the others being K92 and Skeena. So I think we're in pretty good company there. And one of the things that we did when we did our 2nd deal with Barrick, which was an option over the old mine, or over the surface of the old mine, we got 125 years of data. So we got exclusive access to that data, and getting that data really informed our exploration program, but it also informed this larger consolidation effort that we've undertaken. One of the challenges that we hit us was a lot of this data was in paper format, it's analog, so we had to digitize everything, and that took an extra 6 months for us to complete. But again, that really has informed our exploration program, and we're information from this data set. So the 3 deals we did with Barrick here, an option over the surface area of the old mine. Maitland, we own 100% of surface and mineral, and Richmond Hill, which we have under option. And these 3 are all on private ground. So all 4 of Dakota Gold's rigs are on private ground. And I emphasize that because a lot of the questions we get asked are, have to do with permitting. Can you permit in the Black Hills? Can you permit anything in the U.S.? These are questions that are top of mind for investors. And I'd be more than happy to open up some questions at the conclusion of this presentation. Many of you heard me talk about this before. This long section is really what brought Quartermain and I into pursuing this opportunity. On the right-hand side is the old mine. Some of the colors can be a little bit difficult to identify, but basically there's 8 main gold zones. They call them ledges, and ranging in size from 1 to 19 million ounces of gold. So with our discovery in the JB zone that we announced a few weeks ago, we think we've hit a new ledge, and it's in the same host. And in our press release, we had a picture of what the core looks like, and we had a picture of 13 ledge and 19 ledge and main ledge right next to the core from our JB discovery, and it's you can't tell which zone you're in. So really encouraged by that. And then our earlier discovery that we announced was in February, which is in a different unit, a younger package of rocks called tertiary. And we're really excited about that. Homestake never actually assayed for any tertiary mineralization during the 125 years that they were mining. And this horizontal line here is the North Drift discovery that Homestake drove back in the early 1990s. They spent $70 million, and they made a discovery to what they call the North Drift discovery. So we are also drilling the up-dip portion of North Drift as a part of this phase 1 drill program. So there's a lot going on in this plan view map, but I'll separate it into 2 distinct target opportunities by color. So blue is tertiary, red is Homestake formation. So this blue outline here, combined with the press release that we announced today, we've got almost 10,000 feet of prospective strike length within the tertiary. So just to the north of Maitland is a project called Blind Gold that we own. There, a bunch of samples have been taken. There's a historical Homestake hole that demonstrate that this mineralization extends further to the north. So we've got a lot of room here at Maitland and into our Blind Gold project. And then this JB discovery that we announced a few weeks ago is almost a 400-meter step out, or is over 400 meters step out from where we were drilling previously. And those kinds of grades are very high grade. And now this next phase of our drilling at Maitland is about really trying to vector towards where those high grade areas, high grade or thicker areas of these ledges can be. Just in the bottom right hand side of the page here, you'll see 19 ledge. This is an actual outline of the footprint of a ledge that had 3 million ounces of gold mine. So not a huge footprint. This mine was known for having a lot of tons per vertical foot. That's one of the characteristics that made it so special. So almost 10,000 tons per vertical foot. It's a lot of ounces of gold here. And this discovery at Maitland is about 3.5 miles north of the old open cut. So great to see. And just one other topic, or one other point here, 97% of Homestake formation is not mineralized. So I'm going to repeat myself. 97% of Homestake formation is not mineralized. So when you encounter gold mineralization in your Homestake, in Homestake formation, it's a very good thing. And then it becomes a function of making adjustments, vectoring, are we too high up, too down, east, west, to where these thicker areas of these ledges can be. And that's this next phase of drilling for us. This cross section here, the area in blue again is the tertiary, so the younger package of rocks that generally sits on top of the Homestake formation. So with every drill hole we drill, we have an opportunity to hit these two different geological units. So really exciting. And just in closing on Maitland, so it's still very early days for us. We have a lot of holes in the lab for assaying. And just given the recent results in our JB discovery and Unionville, we are looking at potentially upsizing the program and adding some additional rigs. Segue into our Richmond Hill project. It's less than 2 miles to the west of our Maitland project. It's on private ground. 2 of our 4 rigs are there. The primary goal here at Richmond Hill is to convert a historical resource into a compliant one, and that's due out in Q1 of 2024. We've drilled over 65,000 feet to date here, and you can see Richmond Hill is just to the north of the Wharf Mine. And for those of you that are new to the story, we did amend our original Richmond Hill agreement to incorporate some new land that Barrick had, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So again, notice the same color. This is tertiary, so this younger package of rocks. These are what's called a breccia pipe. So we thought very strongly that these breccia pipes could make high grade. We are seeing that come to fruition. We had our best gram meter intercept, 98 feet of 0.175 ounces per ton. We've only tested one of the breccia pipes. There's 5 of them. And that's what we're going to be doing this year, is testing all 5 of these breccia pipes. The 2 question marks we'd like to answer this year for Richmond Hill: are these breccia pipes connected at depth? And is the iron formation that we're seeing under the tertiary, is that Homestake formation or some variation of iron formation? So these are questions we'd like to have answered as a part of this drilling. There's quite a vertical extent to these breccia pipes. And historically speaking, of all the holes that were drilled here, most of them were very shallow, sort of 100 to 150 meters, looking for oxide. Our primary interest is in the iron formation under the oxide. So that's ongoing. 2 rigs are parked here, and we've got 30 drill pads that are permitted for our drilling. So as I've talked about before, ESG is very important for us. We're extremely embedded within the community here. Most of our employees in our office in Lead, our head office in Lead, are from the area, went to the South Dakota School of Mines. So we're very active in the community. Our office, we have a town hall that we host every month. And we've made a number of contributions to the South Dakota School of Mines, and also the Caterpillar Mining Hub, which has an underground facility in the old mine where they test out new EVs and autonomous equipment. And we're also looking at some reforestation opportunities and some carbon credit opportunities there as well. And 2 summers ago, we raised almost $50 million. We didn't pay a commission. We took 1% of that and we established our own ESG fund. And furthermore, Bob Quartermain, who is one of our co-chairs, does not receive any compensation. What his salary would be as co-chair, he donates back into our ESG fund. There's been a few changes to the shareholder, composition since we completed the merger, and I think most noteworthy, management is aligned with its shareholders. We own well over 25% of the company, and since we did a lot, our last update, Michael Gray of Agentis has launched coverage. Many of you know Michael. Michael has an excellent reputation in the mining industry as one of the better mining analysts, period, at identifying opportunities that have a chance to get built and bought. And Michael Fairburn of Canaccord's done an excellent job. He was the first person to cover us. We were just at the Canaccord conference in Palm Springs a few weeks ago, and he's done a great job. As I've talked briefly about some of the people involved, the 2 most important people here technically are Gerald Aberle, who was the co-founder of DTRC, the company that JR Resources merged with, and he was the last mine manager at Homestake before the mine shut down. So his knowledge of the old mine and Homestake geology is excellent. And then the exploration work is being led by James Berry. And James was a part of the team that made the discovery at North Drift, which is actually on our project. So he worked underground and also worked at Wharf, and has been looking for an opportunity to come back to the hills for a long time. And then someone who we hired in the last 6 months, Patrick Malone, who I hired from Barrick. He ran their closure group, and he is our chief sustainability officer, and he's been a great addition to the team. So just to kind of highlight and recap, Maitland, really, we have 4 primary target opportunities and 4 main targets at Maitland. Number 1 is to follow up on the JB discovery we announced a few weeks ago. Number 2 is to try to establish the extensions and some strike length to the Unionville discovery that we announced back in February. That's in the tertiary. Number 3 is to go underneath the old Maitland mine. The Maitland mine stopped producing as the U.S. entered the Second World War. And then to drill the up-dip portion of the North Drift discovery that Homestake made back in the early 90s. And at Richmond Hill, it's to convert the historical drilling into a compliant resource, is to drill test all 5 of these breccia pipes, and to see if they are connected at depth. You will see us release some of the historical from both Homestake and some of the work that Dakota Territory Resource Corp did. And the reason why the work we did and announced this morning took so long to get out is there were a couple of small surface parcels we were looking to clean up and consolidate where we own the minerals underneath, but there were a couple of surface holes. We have since cleaned that up. And that's what we announced this morning. There were some high-grade samples that were over 9 grams per ton that are to the very north of Maitland and onto the Blind Gold project, which give us this 10,000 feet of strike length there. So busy year for us, quite active. and you will see a lot more information, a lot more results on our Maitland project and also our Richmond Hill. And then lastly, just in releasing and getting out some of this historical data that we got from Homestake. So with that, Campbell likes to keep me on a short leash and keep me at about 20 minutes. So I think I'm there. So I think now we'll open it up to some questions, should there be any.
Excellent. And again, send in your questions. Just highlighted that right there. Just type something in, press send. Only we see it, and it's anonymous. So you got a lot going on. Looking at the slide here, I guess when are we going to say we have something? Are we talking in months, in years? We look back and say, we're 5 million ounces high grade gold. What's the end game at this stage?
Yeah, so I think it's really twofold with this tertiary and this Homestake formation. So I think at Maitland, we're still nowhere near even defining the limits or any kind of dimensions around both kinds of mineralization in both the tertiary and in Homestake formation. So it's in that early part of the Pierre Lassonde curve. And I keep emphasizing this private ground, and this is becoming a real hot button issue in the US with permitting. There's private ground is by far the most advantageous from a time perspective, and the not having to go through a federal process, and having all this data and some of the previously disturbed land from the old mine. That's something that President Biden is looking to give somewhat preferential treatment of those that are looking to repurpose already disturbed land for future processing and development, thereby not creating any new disturbance.
Speaking of land ownership, are there Indian, Native American groups that you are part of the conversation here? How are things organized in South Dakota? I guess that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think in over a year of drilling, because these drill pads are all on private ground, the public consultation period does not exist. So we haven't encountered any difficulty in getting our permits. We haven't had any consultation yet with any Native American groups. There has been some pickup in the conversation about 40 miles to the south. There was a private company that was looking to do some exploration on U.S. Forest Service, and that did go through a fairly extensive, contentious public comment period. But at this point, I mean, Homestake operated for the 125 years with little to no involvement, and same thing with Wharf, which is owned and operated by Core.
Okay. Looking at the land package, could this ultimately be a sort of hub and spoke of different sources of ore? Make the whole thing one open pit? How does this play out?
Yeah, I think with both the tertiary and the Homestake formation discoveries, we'd be looking at an underground target, an underground opportunity, and that's also because that would dramatically lower the footprint. And that's Maitland, whereas at Richmond Hill, there was a past producing open pit mine there. So it's been previously disturbed. It's all on private ground. So at Richmond Hill, I think you can look at potentially doing both there, both having an open pit and transitioning to an underground opportunity.
Okay. What is the host rock in the breccia pipes, or are the breccias purely structural? Person is trying to understand the volumetric implications of the breccias.
Yeah, so great question. I think what we're seeing with these breccia pipes is that there's a much greater vertical extent to them. But we still, because we have these surface samples, several miles to the north, we've got this, 10,000 feet of prospective strike length within the tertiary. supported by additional drilling that Homestake had done to the north. It's obviously got a fairly extensive strike length. We're trying to understand the dimensions. And is this are there two tertiary breccia bodies here, or is it one contiguous one? And that's the same thing over at Richmond Hill. But at Richmond Hill, prior to starting the commencement of drilling at Richmond Hill, there were 6 breccia pipes, and we've since connected 2 of those 6. So there's 5 breccia pipes. And again, we just need more pierce points, more drilling to better understand the extent and volume of what we're dealing with. I hope that someone answers your question.
There are other names, obviously Barrick and Cora and Agnico. Could you ultimately be the consolidator of these other of your neighbors, or?
Yeah, look, I think there was.
Are there assets sort of stranded? I guess, if that's the right word.
Well, it just depends on corporately what these other companies want to do. You know, I think Agnico gave a phenomenal presentation at the BMO conference in February, where they are trying to encourage others in the industry, the gold industry, to do more consolidation. Where with what Agnico has done as a footprint in the Abitibi in Quebec and Ontario. So with buying Kirkland Lake, with acquiring the other half of Canadian Malartic through the acquisition of Yamana. So I think there's definitely a perception that the gold industry has too many companies, and more consolidation is required where assets are contiguous or next to each other. So you have the ability to think about synergies and optimizing and one G&A and not 3. So yeah, I think that if there was an opportunity to have this entire district under one roof, I think that would be something that could be of interest to us. But we have our plate really full right now with Maitland and Richmond Hill and just the historical data. But again, when we put our big picture hats on, those are things that we obviously think about as well.
Historical data, you're gonna, I guess, have to go back and corroborate and re-drill and all that. But what is the quality of the data? Is it possible to build internal models?
Yeah, so great question, Campbell. We certainly have our own internal resources, our own internal models, but they're not SK 1300 compliant or 43101 compliant. But so when we acquired these projects, Maitland had 2 historical reports. They had one from Homestake. Actually, both were from Homestake. Richmond Hill, there was an oxide resource, there was a sulfide resource. So we had 4 non-43101 compliant or SK 1300 compliant resources. So we knew we had a really good starting point. And again, having the benefit of consolidating most of this area, we can now look at these targets from a district scale, perspective, and not being limited to where we can drill and having a lot of room to expand on private ground.
All right. What goes into deciding where to allocate financial resources and drill rigs, given you've got a wealth of embarrassment of riches of where to poke around?
Yeah, look, I think under the leadership of Quartermain and Steve O'Rourke, there's definitely, we're extremely diligent and rigorous and disciplined with how we allocate capital, and it's about what can we do and get the most bang for our buck. And that's where this opportunity in the Homestake and in the tertiary, having an opportunity to kill 2 birds with one stone with every drill hole we drill is a pretty unique situation to be in. And just being extremely disciplined. I mean, not every target or every anomaly is going to become a target or a mine. So I think just having that discipline and knowing when to vector and when to say, you know what, we've tested this thing, it's just not turning out to the way we thought. But to the credit of James and Jerry and the rest of our exploration group, we're tending to see more positive incremental surprises than anything else. And the whole team is really excited about this JB discovery in the Homestake formation at Maitland.
Are there any royalties that come with the assets, and are there any outstanding cash payments, obligations down the road?
So on the royalty side, so at Maitland, there is a royalty. We have the ability to buy some of that royalty back. Mavericks, it was sold to Mavericks by Barrick, and then Mavericks was acquired by Triple Flag. Richmond Hill, there is a royalty as well where we can buy back some of that, and that's owned by Homestake Formation, which is a subsidiary of Barrick. And we don't have any lump sum payments for any of our projects.
It's a tough, it's a tough gold market right now, and your stock is holding in there, and you are often asked, gee, how do you justify your valuation? So I'm going to ask it again. Every month things are, maybe the answers will change, but why do you think you're $3.43?
Well, I'll answer it two ways, Campbell. I would say that, earlier on when we put this company together and completed the merger and the uplist, we got a lot more of those questions, April, May, June of last year. And we have a, pretty good relationship with a lot of our core shareholders, and we try to, treat each shareholder as an equal. And so we've been getting a lot, fewer and fewer of those kinds of questions. It is hard for some people because we don't have any resources on the books from a current compliant resource. But then when you start to walk people through the range and scale of these 4 historical resources, plus the new discovery at Unionville, plus the new discovery at JB, plus some of the new land and all the data, and the fact that our land is worth, we've got 14,000 plus acres of private land where there's a value there. So I would actually go the other way and say, here's why I think we are undervalued, and there's still a massive opportunity here, and it's still very early days, because our theory from day one was that we thought there were repeating Homestake windows along this structural corridor, and we've proven that. And you've heard us talk about proof of concept. And now we have 2 discoveries and a lot of room in a very untested, prime real estate structural corridor. So we think it's very early days. The size of each one of these ledges, the average size was 1 to 5 million ounces, with main ledge being 19. And, there's been almost 7.5 or 8 million ounces of tertiary that have been mined out of the district. So the tertiary is a very receptive host. And our exploration is on private ground where we can somewhat control our own narrative. Getting a permit for exploration is 30 to 45 days. Sometimes it can take as long as 60 days. But, you have a lot of things, going for you. And South Dakota is an excellent jurisdiction, very passionate about exploration and development. And the government has been great to work with.
You seem to have drilling press releases, and every few weeks, every week, it's sometimes. Awesome. Are you pleased with what you're publishing?
Yeah, there probably isn't a gold exploration CEO on the planet that wouldn't like to have higher grade or thicker intercepts. But yeah, I think from where we started to where we are now, I'm really pleased and understanding a lot more now than when we started this of some of the data from the old mine. And, that's why we're so encouraged about what we're seeing and why we think we're already turning that corner. So yeah, I think there's a bit of frustration late last year, just how slow things were with the lab. And, we seem to have a better cadence where the goal here is, every 2-3 weeks you have a press release at Maitland, every 2-3 weeks you have a press release at Richmond Hill, and we'll kind of lump and batch our holes together.
I see $15 million exploration program underway. You published that you have 23 million in cash. Would be a reasonable assumption at some point you'll be going back to the market. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Sure. I think as every exploration story has to live and die by raising money in capital markets, and we're fine for a while, but yes, like every other exploration story out there, at some point we will have to go back to the market.
Right. What is the estimated timeline for the company to reach the development phase? And, sort of asking transition to production. I mean, that's all far off, but let's just say getting to where you're a developer, not an explorer, a high explorer. 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, let's take Richmond Hill, for example. So we've guided the market to Q1 of 24, we'll have a maiden resource. And let's say there's a substantial resource there, and management feels there is a substantially economic resource that we can develop, that's bite-sized in terms of capital. We would look to put out, an economic study. We would probably bypass a PEA and go right to a PFS and call that, 12 months from there. So you're looking at, Q1 of 25. And then, depending on where the market was, we'd look at fast tracking that and accelerating that towards development. So you'd be looking at, probably late 2026. Of course, this is all an absolute arm wave, but if the resource comes out and it's really good, like we think it'll be, then you put economics around that. And depending on where the market is and what your cost of capital is, then you would start the permitting process. Provided that your capital wouldn't be prohibitive for a company of our size to go after. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
but
some projects or some companies have projects, and it just everyone says, "Oh, well, let's can you start small and kind of grow around a producing asset?" And then sometimes that just doesn't work because it's just too much upfront costs. It's either big or go away. Do you see some characteristics of your land package here where you could start small if that outcome made sense, or I'll pick here go produce here while exploring there? Do you have options, say, more than a lot of other companies that kind of they're stuck just having to drill and raise money and it doesn't stop?
Yeah, I think many of you have probably heard Rick Rule or Ross Beatty talk about, all mines have headaches, so I'd rather have a big mine over a small mine, and I'd rather have I think that yes, Campbell, we have options, we have flexibility. Some of these, like for example, at Richmond Hill, there's a shallow oxide resource. There's a leach pad that's a mile and a half away. So I think I mentioned earlier about Quartermain, from discovery at Bruce Jack to first gold pour in under 7 years, which is unheard of in today's market. When you look at, permitting and engineering, consultation, public hearing, so that's the kind of cadence that this management team will bring to this situation.
Great. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, for your great questions, and for following Dakota. And John, if you can kind of close us with why should we follow Dakota this summer, or what should we expect in our news feed, our morning news?
Yeah, thanks, Campbell. Management team of Dakota last year talked about we wanted to find mineralized Homestake formation next to a 40 million ounce deposit. We've done that. We've made 2 discoveries, and proof of concept is check that box into, we think we have repeating windows of mineralized homestake formation within the corridor. So we've made a discovery. We think it's a ledge based on historical data. And typically these ledges are anywhere from 20 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet to 100 feet in thickness. And we think we've tagged one in the homestake formation. The tertiary, it's a lot, I think, more extensive than we thought. So we have more drilling to do to figure out kind of dimensions. So just stay tuned for more drilling, better understanding, and now really starting to sharpshoot this JB discovery to find thicker, higher grade portions of that discovery. And at Richmond Hill, look for that main resource in Q1 of 24. And again, highly encourage anyone here, if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. And, you know, without investors and our shareholders, we don't have an opportunity to do this. So many of you are shareholders, and we really appreciate your support. And so lots of drilling from Maitland and Richmond Hill. And you'll see us introduce and educate the market with some of the new data we've been getting from Barrick.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. And till we meet again.
Thank you.